Hello, welcome back. So in this Tumbler tutorial, what we're going to do here is I'm going to go over how I made a cup for a cup swap that I was in. Now, we were supposed to make a tumbler about home. Well, this particular person has had a lot of homes over the years because of her husband being in the military. So I decided that I would take these old maps that I have from my grandfather. He collected maps, and I have maps from all over the United States. And I decided I was going to cut them up and make each of the places that they had lived a part of the cup on the map. So I looked up the military bases and the states that she lived in, and we kind of went from there. So what I was doing here was trying to map out for lack of a better term, I was trying to map out where we were going to put each one. So I was taking kind of like a larger piece of, California, and then I was taking, because California and Texas were so big, and then it was like North Carolina and, different smaller states. So I was kind of figuring like what would work for each place. So this is something that if you were doing something like this, if you were printing off maps or printing off, books or, words or something like that from a play or whatever you were trying to do, you just kind of want to, like I said, map it out and kind of prepare it so that you know where each piece is going to go, because you're not dealing with just a flat surface. You're dealing with, how far it's going to go around and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to take a minute or more than a minute, I don't know, and go over kind of my planning on that. So I strategically planned each place and how it was going to be wrapping around the tumbler. So now we can go over technique. So anytime you're using paper or fabric, anything like that, you want to use Mod Podge. And what it's going to do is give you a nice seal on the paper. So what you're going to use at first is use it as a glue to glue the actual paper or fabric down onto the tumbler and onto itself if you're doing that. And then after that, you are going to actually want to come back and seal it with the Mod Podge. Now you will see that I actually kind of push it down in places and I kind of force it underneath the paper. And that's so that we can get a really nice seal. And you'll notice at first what I'm trying to do is glue all of the pieces down. I'm not worried about covering them in the glue just yet. I mean, some pieces are going to get covered because we're gluing pieces on top of pieces. But right now, we're just trying to get everything glued down. We're trying to make sure that all the little side edges are all down, and that if you have any kind of bubbles or anything like that, that you are pushing those out. Because you don't want to get big clumps of glue underneath there and then them not dry, and then you're putting it under epoxy. So you always want to make sure that you're pushing those big globs of glue out. And as I was going along, I was still kind of just checking to make sure that there wasn't any glue in there. And then I was also still kind of having to make sure that it still fits. So I was still having to kind of trim some of the edges off and get it to fit exactly to where it would make sense, where I kind of left a little bit of a lip at the top and a little bit of a lip at the bottom. I figured I really didn't need to cover those because it really didn't make any sense to do that. So I just kind of left the top part open and the bottom part clean. And after I went around the cup and made sure that there wasn't any bubbles left or I got any major glue particles, big globs or whatever off of there, I went ahead and covered the entire cup in Mod Podge. Every single map, all up and down the entire cup to seal those maps in there. So I put 2 coats of Mod Podge. I let it sit overnight so that it was good and dry when I woke up in the next morning. And this is the first coat of epoxy, and I went ahead and put 1 more coat of epoxy because this was kind of a thin layer of maps. So this is the Sharpie that I used, and I've used this several times before, but I actually did not film myself doing this because I totally forgot to put the camera on, but this is basically what I did. I just started at one point and I just took the marker and went all the way around, kind of going throughout each state and where I thought each place would be significant. And I just kind of went back through and made sure that the lines weren't smudged or anything like that, or they needed to be deeper or darker. So I found this little SVG for these little boots, and they're just little boot footprints. And I kind of cut them kind of small because I was putting them at the bottom of the cup. Well, there were little pieces that were inside of there, and I was trying so hard to get them to stay down and, to be inside of that little footprint, that those bottom pieces, there was actually supposed to be little bitty tiny pieces inside of the bottom, the heel part. And I said, nope, those are just going to be sacrificed. I was going to try to pull them out, but I decided in the end that it wasn't really worth it. That we pretty much get the point here with the boot prints. So I put the boot prints, right down at the bottom there. And then I had the little footprints for her. And I wasn't sure, if I just kind of made them a little bit smaller, a little bit more feminine and not so like boot-like. I realized then that I kind of put them a little bit too lower, but then I thought, you know what, they'll just go right next to her because they're just partners and they're going through life together. So they'll just be next to each other. So that was my excuse for not putting them high enough up. Plus they were also a little bit bigger than what I had thought. I kind of measured them out. So, but whatever, I think it ended up really cute at the bottom there. So this is one full sheet of Waterslide, and I actually cut this in PowerPoint, but you could definitely do it in Word document or Google Docs on the Word or anything like that. I just made it as big as the page and just printed it off because I didn't need to do it in Cricut or anything like that because I knew that the length of the page and how big it would actually print was going to be the width that I would need it to be for the size around the cup. I hope that makes sense. So that's basically what I did. I just made sure that it was long enough to wrap all the way around. So I sealed this Waterslide 3 times with clear spray from Rust-Oleum, and I just sprayed it. 15 minutes later, went back, sprayed it again. 15 minutes later, went back, sprayed it again. Now, with this water, I just put it in the water and just kind of slowly moved it from side to side, from side to side. And then what I did here was put the whole thing on the cup so that I could kind of get the whole cup wet. And then I kind of just slid just a little piece of it kind of off and then attached that to the cup. And then I just slowly slid it off very carefully. Now this was supposed to be kind of a flag waving, so it didn't need to be straight by any means. I just kind of wanted it kind of flowing over the side of the, around the cup. And once I got it completely off, I did have a little bit of an overlap, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was solid on there. I made sure that there wasn't any bubbles. I was kind of checking to see around the cup and just kind of patting things down. I do eventually take my squeegee, like a silicone brush squeegee, and kind of go through and I just slowly, gently wet that and wet the Waterslide and just kind of pushed the bubbles out and kind of moved the Waterslide to make sure that there wasn't any really bad bubbles underneath there. And here I took my razor blade and cut right along the edge there and cut that excess off of the other side. But you want to do this very, very, very carefully. You do not want to slip and cut something. I mean, you can kind of fix it with the water slide, but you just want to be really careful. This stuff is really kind of flimsy. And then, like you see there, I just kind of took the squeegee and just kept going around. Since it is a full wrap all the way around, you want to make sure that you really investigate the entire cup. And once you get that done, I just pat it down just a little bit. You don't want to dry it completely. You want to still kind of leave it a little bit wet, but you don't want it to be like dripping wet or anything. So I just kind of pat it down just a tiny bit. And there it is, all dried and ready for epoxy. You want to make sure that you let that water slide dry. So it was probably an hour or more. You know, this might have been even the next day. I'm not sure, but I know I waited quite some time before I put another coat of epoxy on there. So this is the first coat of epoxy after I got the water slide on and everything. I put a coat of epoxy on here just to seal all of that in, and before I put her name on there. So this is called Hip Swing from the Glitter Ranch, and it is an additive that you put in the epoxy, and you just want to put ever so slightly. I mean, you do not want to put too much of this. It's just enough to kind of give it that extra sparkle. And once I get that in there, I actually put it back on my epoxy spinner and let it spin so that it can get distributed throughout that entire amount of epoxy there. And then this is the first layer after I put the name on. And I actually used like a silver frosted vinyl and a blue and red rose kind of pattern vinyl on the backside, just to kind of make it a little bit more feminine. And I put one more final coat of epoxy, and there she is. And I really love the sentimental value of this. That's something that, you know, you really can't duplicate, and it's a one-of-a-kind piece. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun making this and mapping it out and planning it. And she actually sent me a message, and she was very grateful and thought it really represented her and her family. And so I was very happy that she got it. I was happy that I was able to make it for her. And I just wanted to share the story with you guys. And if there's any tips and tricks here you like, join my Facebook group, and I will see you next time.